Hello again, and welcome to Clear Skies Retirement with Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. My name is Randy Cook, and each week, Jay and I sit down here and talk through some of the issues of retirement. We talk about you finding that person that you need to kind of guide you through this because, boy, it's different. All these years, you've been making a paycheck, getting paid every 2 weeks, and you figuring out your budget and all like that. Well, it gets different in retirement because your employer's not paying you. You are paying you. And how does that work? Jay, how are you doing today?
I'm doing real well, Randy. How have you been since we last chatted?
I'm good. The weather goes back and forth. One day it's 70, the next day it's 20. I've got whiplash here, and then there's the pollen. I mean, it's crazy. It's nuts.
Well, I was reading just the other day that down here in Texas, where we are at least, like the leaves have come out 4 weeks earlier.
Oh, wow.
Apparently, than they usually do because it's all confused by the temperature heat up and then cool down, and that's what you get, I guess.
Yeah. I have a friend who is a meteorologist. He was on the radio with us, and then he went on TV, and he looked at me one day. He goes, "Randy, do you know why hurricane season starts in June?" I said, "No, why?" And he said, because that's when the water gets to be 80 degrees. Do you know when the water got to be 80 degrees this year? I said, when? He said, March 15th. I was like, okay, I'm good.
So hurricane season started March 15th, I guess, right?
I'm getting it now. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we got a lot of volatility in the stock market going back and forth, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. But, Jay and I have done this story so many different times, and I'm tired of it, but we're going to do an offshoot of it today, and this is that story. Here we go again. That story that says you need $1.2 million to retire, and everybody goes, I'll never get there. Okay, I get it. So here was an interesting article, and it said, you know what? If you don't have $1.2 million to retire, don't worry about it. Go ahead and retire, because maybe you'll get there in retirement. And I was like, wow. Okay. But their rationale was this. So many people get into retirement and they're only spending about 2% of their money. If you're spending 2% of your money, the market will probably bring you up and you will actually make money in your retirement years. You'll see your account go up. Okay, what do you think of that whole concept?
so the number's 1.2 this week.
That's this week. Yes.
Is that what it is? That's this week. Okay. Well, next week it'll be different, right?
Right.
And yeah, we talk about that number all the time. So what does it range from? Would you say, Randy, like 900,000 to 5 million?
I've seen 1.8, and then Susie Orman will come out and say 5 million, and then the guy from Shark Tank will say 2 million, or so. It's all over the place.
And we're talking about what's the right number. Well, let's not even worry about that because, I mean, we've established that's different for everybody, right? What we'll talk about here more is, and we discuss this pretty frequently as well, is how common it is for people that don't have a plan to either spend way too much or spend almost nothing. And so why is that happening, right? So, the spending extra money part's easy. We could all do that with our eyes closed. That's not the hard part, right? That's easy. So do you risk running out of money? Those people are typically like, well, I'll worry about that when I get there. What concerns me more with the people that we work with that are coming in where they're underspending, and I want them to enjoy their retirement, right? So you work 30, 40 years to get to this point of retirement, and you've sacrificed and saved to get there. And then because there's no plan in place, you'll see people sometimes just living off Social Security. That happens all the time. We'll see couples coming in and, they're getting $5,000 a month between them for Social Security. And they've got these multi-million-dollar 401ks where you don't have to go wild and spend $20,000 a month, but you could easily double your income to, maybe $10,000 a month and still never risk running out of money. But it's not being done out of fear of running out of money, right? And so, what if you extrapolate this to the end, what happens? Your kids or somebody else gets all the money, or you never enjoyed it, right? Well, maybe that's your goal, but for most people, it's not.
Yeah, I've heard many people talk about, and you mentioned this, is why do you want your kids driving Porsches to your funeral, right? But at the same time, the whole idea, I've heard people say, how long does it take to get kind of in the retirement mode, kind of find your lane there as far as retirement. Some people say it's 2 years. And some of that, I always thought that was, I'm figuring out what to do with my time. I'm figuring out who I am in retirement. But there's another factor to that, Jay, and that is that people spend so little money at the beginning that they finally see their money going up, and then they go, we better spend some of this. And it takes a couple of years for you to figure that out. I don't want that to happen for people that we talk to. I want people to kind of hit the starting line and go through the tape and just have fun when they go into their retirement years. Does it take a written plan for people to see it in black and white down on paper to say, go ahead and spend, go do it? Or is it still difficult to get people to do that?
Yeah. Once you go through the planning process and everything's laid out, it certainly adds a significant degree of comfort there, right? Just seeing how it all works. And you mentioned if you have a written plan, will that help you out? I've told you this story before. Some of our listeners would have heard it as well, but I'll repeat it again. A written plan is more than something you scratch down on a notepad or a few numbers that you write into Excel, right? And this is a great example of thinking you've got the planning done and there's holes all over the whole plan. So this was some time ago. All I remember, it was before COVID. That seems to be like the new, BC AD sort of thing, right? It's before COVID or after COVID. So it was before COVID sometime. I can't remember if it was 19 or it was 2017, whatever. And a guy came in to visit us, and I think he was about 53. He was a couple of years before he would have been able to retire officially at 55 from the company that he worked at, right? And so he comes in, and right away in the first few minutes, it was very clear he was a bit of a do-it-yourselfer, right? And he's like, well, I do it myself. Like, I want to keep doing it myself in retirement. And I said, well, why are you here? And like, obviously, I know why you're here. Is he's not really sure that he's doing it right? And so that's why he's there. And I said, hey, look, I've already put some time aside. Let's chat, whatever. That's fine. Let's go through the plan that you've got. I'll give you half an hour, and let's just kind of address your concerns. And he said, well, I'm not really sure I have any concerns. My picture looks really good. And I was like, all right, well, talk to me about it. He's like, well, my plan is to retire at 55, which was a year, 2 year, 3 years away. It was coming up. He'd done a great job saving, right? So he had $1.5 million maybe in his 401k. And he's like, I'm going to take my Social Security at 62. Well, we can have a discussion about whether that's the right thing or not later. He's a long way from that anyway. And he said, I need about $10,000 a month to live on. And I've been doing this for decades. And pretty much if someone throws a few numbers at me, I've got this in my 401k, my Social Security is this much, I need this much to live on, I'm going to have a rough idea right away in my head. Are we in the ballpark here? Is this monthly income that you're going to need to retire on? Are we even having a realistic conversation about this being possible? And at his age, with the amount of money he had, I was just thinking to myself, something's not lining up here. And for a while, I couldn't figure it out. And he kept kind of talking about, what his plan was, what he wants to do in retirement. And so as we were going through it, I said, hey, let me ask you this, because he's just showing me raw numbers, right? And obviously there needs to be assumptions made here about, how are you going to invest your money? What's the growth going to be? What sort of inflation factor are you taking into account? Which, if you remember back to 17 or 18 or wherever it was, inflation was basically nothing, right? We didn't have, we hadn't really had an inflation issue until 2022, 2023. And so, a lot of people, as silly as it sounds, kind of forgotten about inflation, really. And so I said to him, the first thing I said is, all right, hey, let me ask you this. What assumed rate of return are you thinking you're going to get through your retirement? Now, keep in mind, right? 55, it's very possible he's retired for 30 years. Right? 85, that's very possible. Yeah. And he said 16% is my assumed rate of return year in, year out through his retirement. I said, all right, well, what landed on 16%? Well, that's what I got last year on my portfolio. So I was like, all right, well, we'll come back to that one. What assumed rate of inflation? You're saying you need $10,000 a month. What does that $10,000 look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Where are we? Oh, well, I haven't put an inflation rate in. Okay, well, now I understand why this looks so good, is that you're not operating in reality. You're not using real numbers that are going to make sense, right? And so that's a great example of what we've got here when we see a divergence of people spending too much or spending too little. Either there's been no planning done, and so the safest thing, maybe it's not the smartest thing, but the safest thing in their mind is, I just won't do anything. I just won't touch it. And you know what? If you don't touch it, you're not going to run out of it, obviously, right? So you check the box there. You're like, that's right. And look at the price you paid to not run out of it.
Yeah.
Or we've got this guy, and the advice I left him with is like, hey, we're not going to have the opportunity to work together. You kind of do this yourself. But if it were my money, if I were you, I'd rethink that assumed rate of return. I'd rethink the inflation, cost of living never going up. I'd rethink all those things. So then you get people like him that I don't know what he did. I don't know if he redid his numbers, if he decided to work long or whatever happened to him. He's on the other end, right? You go headlong into retirement at 55 with the stats that he had. He's probably out of money in his early 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's where the problem lies.
These are the kind of stories where you hear people run out of money. There's a lot of those kind of stories. And some people say, no, nobody runs out of money. But what they do is they make adjustments to their lives. They find that I was too far out on that scale, and I thought I was going to bring in more money. Now you start canceling vacations. You start making adjustments, say, oh, I thought I could do this. I can only do that once or twice a year now. And that's not what we want for you in retirement either. Give Jay a call, and let's sit down and actually put pen to paper and do it realistically. You may say in your mind, I got to beat the market every year. Do you? You may say, I need a 5% return. Do you? Or do you need more? Or do you need less? Let's see the realities of your retirement down on paper. To do that, Jay will do a no-cost, no-obligation look at your retirement. What that really means is you call, have a discussion about what you're looking for, what your concerns are. Let's get it out on the table and sit down and build a plan for it. If everything's going along great, great. If there's some gaps there, let's help you fill those. Here's the numbers on the website. 210-985-6200 is the number. 210-985-6200 or retire210.com. Pretty simple. Retire210.com. All right, so one thing that might happen to you in your retirement years is you may receive some kind of an inheritance. Mom and dad pass, you get the house, you get something, you get their IRA, whatever like that. I've got a story here of a brother and sister, Ellen and Arthur, and they're in their early 50s, and their aunt passed away. She had no children, so she sent them the inheritance, which was $1 million. Each one got $500,000, and they handled it very, very differently. Here's Ellen. She paid off her mortgage, which was $280,000. She did some home renovations. She enjoyed the money. She took an expensive cruise. She did a lot of gifting. About 3 years later, for the most part, the money was gone. Arthur did it a different way. He paid off credit cards, all his high-interest debt. He increased his contributions to his 401k. He used some of the money as gap money because he was putting more in his 401k, so he used some of it as spending money for the month. But 3 years later, he still had a lot of money left. Now, obviously, Arthur did his probably a little bit better than Ellen. Let me ask you about this. When people get an inheritance, do they lose their heads? Do they make crazy decisions? Do they make wrong decisions? Are they too conservative? What do you see when people get an inheritance?
Yeah, it's all over the place. I've got a couple of examples of this. I actually had, well, they're not clients anymore because the money's gone. But
okay.
I had some clients that won the lottery.
Oh, wow.
Believe it or not.
Okay.
Right. And it wasn't one of these huge Powerballs. It was, I think it was 6 million that they won. So still all right,
Fantastic.
And yeah, and they were older when they won it. And probably in 4 or 5 years, almost all of it was gone.
Wow.
And it's, it's kind of, I've never had this much money before. Now, the advice that you usually hear, and I think it's great advice, is whether it's an inheritance, whether it's a windfall of any type, right? Lottery, whatever, don't do anything for a few months. Just don't do anything, right? Put it in a money market, put it in a savings account. Don't tell anybody. For God's sake, don't tell anybody, because that's the quickest way that you'll lose it, right? Is everybody comes out of the woodwork wanting a handout.
Yeah.
And just kind of carry on with your life, and then over time, as you've digested it, you'll have time to figure it out. But, this money, there was a new house, and then the kids all needed something, and the grandkids all needed something. And like, you hear it with that. We had somebody else who They got a settlement from one of the utility companies here because the husband was killed. It was a very sad story. Same stuff. Money's gone in a few years. So whatever sort of windfall it is, stop. Don't do anything right away, right? Just stop and kind of think about the situation. Let it marinate, I guess you could say, for a while. The other side of this too is we don't know these people's situations, but it would sound to me like one of these siblings used the inheritance to stabilize themselves and kind of guarantee their retirement, if you want to say that.
Yeah.
And the other one just went through it, right? Now, maybe she has a ton of other money, so she didn't have to worry about it. But the point I come to here more is you should not be relying on a windfall, in particularly an inheritance, to make your retirement work. Because the number of people we've sat down and met with whose retirement is heavily contingent on their parents dying relatively soon is unfortunate, right? And we just work with so many people. We've got so many actual stories about this. We had some clients who she retired. I think it was 2015. She retired, and the husband had a pretty good job, and he liked the job and had no plans to retire for another 5 years or 6 years, quite a while. And as long as he kept working, everything was going to be fine, right? She could retire. His salary was substantial. And when we're doing the planning, they hadn't done a really great job of savings, right? There was some 401k money. It wasn't very significant. And they had what's the right word? They had a high expectation of living, right? They like the finer things in life, right? And so, as we're doing the planning, we just have to show them the raw data and say, hey guys, look, this is the truth. What you're wanting to achieve in retirement with what you have, it just doesn't work, right? It'll work, but it'll work for a couple of years. Then you'll be out of money, right? And they said, well, we're really not too worried about that because we're each expecting about $1 million from our parents as an inheritance.
Okay.
And, both of our parents are early 80s. So, we're expecting that in the next few years. I was like, all right, well, if you want me to throw those numbers in there, I can show you what it looks like. But you don't know what's going to happen. Are your parents going to end up in long-term care and the money's gone, right? Is it not there? So that really wasn't their issue. But 10 years later, all the parents are still alive. That's their problem.
It's a good thing, but a bad thing for them, man.
Well, that's. I guess it depends which side you're on, right? But that's the thing is that of course they're not wanting their parents to pass, but at the same time they've got this conflict that hey, that's what we were relying on. Well, my kind of attitude with that is that nobody should expect anything. Do your planning, right? Make it work by yourself. If something comes along, great, cherry on top, right?
Yep.
But relying on windfalls, inheritances, whatever it is, you see it over and over again. That's a recipe for disaster. And just one more thing to add on top of that, 99% of our clients are boomers. What is that? 1946 to 1964, I think, is what it is, is most of our clients. And so many of our clients' children are quietly crossing their fingers, waiting for their inheritance to come in. And I got bad news for a lot of them. There's not a plan to leave inheritance.
Right.
Yeah. It's, hey, I worked for this money. And fair enough, too, right? Like, I worked for this money. I got you through college or whatever it is, and now it's our time to live. Set your plan up that you're not dependent on others.
Great points. And having an inheritance is maybe it's a ticket to a great retirement, but we see over and over and over again how people, they get a little over their skis when they know that money's coming in. Give Jay a call. Let's talk through it. That might be something that's in your future and you wonder how you're going to handle it. And I talk about this all the time. As a person who teams up with a financial advisor, when these things come around, you're actually able to bounce it off somebody. Should I lease the car? Should I buy the car? I found this great place in Florida that we'd love to spend some time in. Does that mean I should buy it or I should rent it once a year, twice a year, 3 times a year for 3 weeks or whatever? Or I'm getting an inheritance. How do I handle this? Great questions. Let's give you some resources to get some answers. Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. Here's the number and the website. Do a no-cost, no-obligation look at your retirement. 210-985-6200. 210-985-6200 or retire210.com. And you'll see Jay's process right there. You'll see his book right there. There's a lot to tool around and learn more about on the website. Again, retire210.com. Well, when I saw this story and I heard the president say, you know what? I admire the retirement system in Australia. And I said, I know who I'm going to talk to about that.
There you go.
Okay.
Great topic.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple of minutes left here. Let's go through this pretty quickly because really the main difference between what we do in this country and what Australia does is we put our money in 401ks and that money is not taxed until we use it in retirement. In Australia, they do it a little bit differently. They put money into the account and it gets taxed each year at 15%. And then in retirement, you take it out however you want. It's all tax-free. So my question to you, Jay, is it better for us to be doing the tax-deferred route, or is it better what Australia does is tax it along the way, and then when you get into retirement, we don't have to worry about RMDs and all those taxes that we talk about?
Yeah, see, I think that, so I've actually got, so it's called 401k here, right? In the States, it's called 401k. That same thing is what's called superannuation in Australia, right? That's the term that's used. And it's really a better deal, I think, than the options that we have here. And the reason I say that is the option we have here is you put it in, you don't pay tax, and we talk about it all the time, right? It ends up becoming a problem on the back end, right? We got to get it out. It's all taxable then. Or you pay tax on the whole thing at whatever tax bracket you're in. Maybe you're in the 20, 30% tax bracket, and then it goes into the Roth side of it and comes out tax-free. Well, it's almost like a hybrid, right? Because you do pay tax on the way in, but you pay a lower percentage of tax than what you would for most of us. You know, most of us are above the 15% tax bracket. So you pay a lower tax on the way in, and then it comes out tax-free. So somewhat the best of both worlds. This is the big thing, though, Randy. And I guess depending on if you're an employer or an employee, you would like this. The contribution by the employer to the superannuation is mandatory. It's 11 or 12%, whether the employee contributes or not.
Wow.
It's a mandatory 11 or 12%. And, you know, more and more, we have conversations with the children of clients about this more and more. And, you know, we don't have that sort of system in this country. And there'll probably be a lot of pushback from employers, obviously, right? If you've got to, you know, contribute 12%, there wouldn't be too much appetite for that. But the bigger thing to take away from this, I think, is that more and more, the responsibility is going to be on you from as young as you can start to save and save and save, because it's going to be on you. Social Security, you know, that comes up in the news every now and then. It's not going to be able to be funded. You know, I think it's going to be there, but it's going to be a far less of a benefit than people are getting now when it comes time for me and my children to get it. Probably you'll have to be older. You know, more and more of it is pushed onto the individual. Take charge of it now.
Yep. It's on you, and that means it's time for you to sit down and talk about what it looks like to find out what you've saved and how it's going to translate to income in retirement. Are you headed for a tax problem? Are there some healthcare issues there? How do you afford healthcare in retirement? Wow, lots of questions. Let's get them answered for you. Jay will do that meeting with you. No cost, no obligation. Here's the number to set it up. It's 210-985-6200. 210-985-6200 or retire210.com. That is all the time that we have today on Clear Skies Retirement. We appreciate you listening. We'll be here next week, and we hope you will be too. And remember to have this podcast delivered straight to your favorite podcast platform by hitting like, follow, or the subscribe button. Thanks again for listening to Clear Skies Retirement, and we'll see you next time.
Investment advisory services offered through investment advisory representatives at Secure Financial Management, a registered investment advisor. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed are not designed nor intended to be applicable to any person's individual circumstances. It should not be considered as investment advice, nor does it constitute a recommendation that anyone engage in or refrain from a particular course of action. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments can fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Financial professionals are not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Secure Financial Management is licensed in your state, please contact their office. Secure Financial Management is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Wholesalers Insurance. Jamin J. Kirkwood, Texas Insurance License number 1421850.